All right, and welcome everybody to a very special edition of the Dynasty Rewind. I'm your host, Michael Bauer. Tonight, I'm not the best in the business. I'm the second best in the business. We've got the first here with us. I want to give a shout out to my crew, Porkman, Nate, Chev, all these guys put this together for me. I will be adjusting my camera throughout. There we go. It's a little bit better. Sorry, I'm all head here tonight. They arranged me to meet with one of my icons in the industry here. We have Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers. Andy, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join me. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be fun. It'll be a good time chatting.
All right. So obviously we're a smaller podcast, got the logo right behind us. We're the Dynasty Rewind. We're all Dynasty all the time. We just kind of reformatted. There's so many shows out there that do in-season stuff. It's not our forte. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We could scout players. I could tell you here's who you should draft in the fourth round of your rookie draft. But you guys, you nail it with the waiver show. You nail it with your starts and sits and everything like that. And man, I was whiffing bad on that stuff this year. So I'm going to leave that to the pros. But behind every podcast, there's a business. You know what I mean? There's finances, there's artwork, there's recording software, all that good stuff. So we're going to kind of tap into your brain about that. I'm assuming were you the brains behind all that to get this whole thing started?
It's been a combination. I mean, in the very beginning, Mike and I decided to do a podcast that was built around our fantasy league itself. And, Mike's got a background in both game design, game audio design, a lot of music stuff. And that was very complimentary to building a brand and building a voice for the podcast. I had a history in more the websites and building businesses, and we both worked together at a gaming studio. So, it was a group effort, and Jason's, he was the CEO of the company we both worked for many years. So I think the big thing for us is we started the podcast with the business in mind. It wasn't just, the podcast. So we always came at it from the angle of how are we going to make this a business in a time, in a sport where it's seasonal. So that was something that was a vision for us from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you could do it year round too. And now I wanted to ask you this. What do you like better, redraft or dynasty?
That's a good question. People normally work keeper leagues into the middle of that, and I normally choose the keeper league option because I like to have something that's at least lasting throughout the year. So right. I guess if I was staring down dynasty or redraft, I would choose dynasty for sure because it just keeps you active throughout the season and in the off season, and there's just something to talk about. And obviously that's an area, with you guys focusing on it, it's an area that's growing tremendously. I think accessibility, platform growth, dynasty flexibility on platforms has helped that. And so I guess I would vote dynasty in that case.
Yeah, obviously we are as well. That's what we do all the time. Mm-hmm. I actually always wanted to ask you too, what is in your coffee mug? I see you guys
now it's LaCroix. That's what it is most of the time for me, is some sparkling water, which is really like the worst thing that you can be drinking to do a podcast because you just constantly have to burp. And so what is you've got like 1,000 shows worth of me trying not to burp onto the microphone all the time. Jason's got a coffee from time to time. Mike's normally got a LaCroix or something like a water. So none of us are pounding coffees all day long.
See, this is the stuff that I'm really intrigued by.
The very behind the scenes, what we drink. Yeah.
So no one's ever really asked me, but it's I got a glass of club soda.
Sure.
And I usually drink tea to keep my voice strong because
that's a smart thing to do. Yeah, that would be smart. I should try that someday.
But we're doing 2 podcasts tonight, so I'm still kind of fresh. So I'll be making some tea later, when I'm doing our second podcast of the night at 10 o'clock for our patrons. So that should be fun. So one thing I wanted to ask you as well. A lot of people, they say to me, they come to me for advice about starting a podcast, which I'm always happy to give, but they say that the market is so saturated that they want to start a podcast, but they don't want to because they're afraid they're not going to be heard. My advice is always do it.
Sure.
Because how do you know that you're not better than somebody else unless you get your voice out there? Is that advice you would give as well?
I think for the most part. I mean, I know when we started our podcast, the argument still could have been there. There were fantasy podcasts that were doing it well and doing it for a long time before we got in there. it is a space where you have to have some level of patience, and you have to care about what you're talking about enough to be willing to persevere through, a long period of time where you're not just being validated by download numbers or financial gain. You have to love what you're talking about. And so I think that would be the advice I'd give is, make sure that you love it. It would be like getting into the podcasting industry and saying, well, there's a gap in the market about lawn care podcasts. Well, if you don't love lawn care and then you have to grind through lawn care for like 100 shows before you see any like tangible fruit, that's not going to work. Like, it's not going to happen. So if you are really passionate about something, the barrier to entry in podcasting is so low. I mean, you get a microphone, record it, post it. You could do it for almost free, and see if you enjoy it, and don't feel like if you don't enjoy it, don't do it, because you're not going to succeed in that case. But even though it's saturated, if you have something unique to say, I think that's why it exists.
So I want to touch on what you just said. We're both dads. So you and we could talk lawn care, I'm sure, all night. The right way to do it, the wrong way to do it. You know what I mean? I take pride in my lawn, which is why, and people berate me for this, I don't have any little play places outside for my daughter. I don't have a dog or anything like that. Well, we need a fence for dog, but there's also a playground right there. So I'm not going to build a huge whatever in our backyard. It's sorry, the lawn care topic kind of caught me off guard there. I wanted to ask you too, are you the fun dad or are you like the punny? Because you guys have Monday Pun Day. So
sure.
you like the punny, make your kids grown?
Certainly. Yeah, okay. I am. And it just happens with age. It just happens through time. You just want your kids to feel awkward around you. It's your goal as a dad. So no, it's I definitely enjoy being a dad. I'm sure you do as well, and it's fun, and it's neat to see your kids grow and develop and fall in love with different things that their personalities are attached to. So but I do try to break out as many dad jokes as I can, and that's my contribution to their world. So no doubt.
Yeah, right now my daughter's 2, so she's not very appreciative. She thinks everything's hilarious.
Well, you
just
start writing them down. Build your notebook out, right?
I try them out on my wife. She's not a fan at all.
That's a good proving grounds, I suppose.
But back to what you said too, talking about the podcast and the business behind it with the financial thing. I think a lot of people expect I'm going to start a podcast. Everyone's going to love me. I'm going to get 1,000 downloads off the bat. I'm going to start a Patreon. I'm going to have 1,000 patrons, and I'm going to make a ton of money doing this. And I'm going to quit my job and do podcasting full time. Full disclosure, I've been doing this podcast for over 2 years, and I have not made a single penny. Now, I should have made money, but every penny that I make, I put right back into the brand. I spend my money. I upgrade everybody's equipment. I make sure everybody has what they need so that maybe in the future, financially it becomes more practical, but I want to make sure that the product is sound before I push anything. And here's one thing that I can't give good advice on, but being as you guys are so big, how do you deal with negativity towards your brand?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that I feel like we've been pretty blessed on that front. Like the people that have followed, we always have, everybody has haters, so to speak, or people that are going to stir up trouble because the internet, right? And I think we've been blessed with really great listenership for the most part. I think that's something we've always kind of rolled our eyes with. Like, we don't get it all right by any stretch of the imagination. You talked about whiffing on waiver wires or something like that. We whiff all the time. You take the information that you have, you break it down to the best of your ability, and you present it. And I think one thing that helps is we have 3 guys with 3 opinions. We give those opinions. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they disagree. People can listen to the logic behind those decisions and then decide on their own. And we're trying to equip people to make decisions the best that we can. But when you get hate, you get hate. I think we've developed thick skin, maybe because of the volume of listeners and voices that are out there. And I think we're all pretty secure in who we are and what we're trying to do. And none of us set out to mess up somebody's starting lineup or set out to screw up some piece of advice. And I will say that we wear it in the sense that our number one goal and what we're rooting for on Sundays comes down to our advice paying off above our own fantasy teams. And I never thought that would happen, but it really did. It happened early where we were willing to take the L on a personal fantasy team more than we would on a start of the week or something like that.
Same.
So it is something that you can't control the outcomes of these games. Vegas can't control them. They try. And so you just have to be positive and deliver the advice that you believe in, follow it yourself, and the chips are going to fall at that point. And it just comes with the job.
I try to just keep it simple. Hey, thanks for listening. Because obviously, if you're hating, that means that you downloaded and you listened to the episode.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Come back. Maybe we'll change. Maybe we won't. Maybe we're not for you. I went on a job interview once and somebody told me, you don't want every customer. You don't want the guy that's sitting in the waiting room complaining about everything there. So you might not want every listener too.
Well, I think that by nature, if you want to have a show that is engaging, you're going to also probably turn some people off. If you are middle of the road on everything that you do, just to appease every person, you probably will have no rabid, passionate fans either, because you're not going to have people that are over the top for your brand. So it does make sense. I mean, we do. Even to this day, it doesn't matter how many years we've been doing it. We really do try to take feedback to heart. It's not one person's loud voice is not going to redefine or remake the entire episode or the show, or change us into a dynasty podcast or an auction or IDP show. But if we stop listening, we're going to miss what the industry is doing too. So we try to make sure our ears are open and we're willing to receive feedback, and then we'll take that and we'll talk about it here. We'll talk about it with the producers and with the team and with the everybody that has a voice on what we do week to week. So, but you're right. I mean, you're going to be polarizing to a degree if you want to have something engaging.
Yeah, and we do that. We have behind the scenes too. We have an intern as well, a guy that hangs out with us. We call him our intern. We gave him some stuff to do for the Patreon and everything. So he loves it though. Sean's a great guy. I want to shout out Sean. I know he was probably behind the scenes with this as well. So Sean, thank you. And thank you. He does a fantastic job, like loading up articles and editing them for the Patreon. Apparently my written grammar is not as good as my spoken grammar, but that's why I do not write articles anymore as well, because I might say something that seems stupid until I explain my logic behind it. And I could do that better vocally or verbally than I can with a written word. Where we go. Okay. All right. Got that one done. What do you think about expanding to alternate platforms? Everyone's on Twitter. I'm sure you guys have a Facebook page. I don't know. I don't really use Facebook a ton. We have a Facebook group. What about like Instagram? I know people are on TikTok now.
Yeah.
What do you feel about those platforms?
Well, you can't do everything, especially when you're starting out. True. I think it's important to try to be where people are at. I mean, if you want to be found and discovered, you need to be where people congregate. And there are a lot of platforms that people congregate on. So, we live by kind of the 80-20 rule around here, where you want to have the most amount of effect coming from the least amount of causes, in the sense that if you spend your entire day grinding on one platform at the expense of everything else you're doing, that's not going to benefit you very much. So as we've grown and expanded and added team members and things of that nature, we've been able to do more on those other platforms. In the very beginning, we were really, really active on Twitter as much as we could be. We are as active as we can be now too. It's just, we can't answer every question one-to-one.
Of course. You'd be on Twitter all day.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, you just try to adapt to what's happening in culture. I mean, when we started, it was all Twitter, Facebook, and then, IG was something you had to be a part of, and you don't want to be left behind, because that's where people are connecting with their interests. So, but we're always having those discussions here about different platforms and the best way that we can communicate our brand on each of them.
So here's one, and people, when I try to do as many guest appearances as I can. I did one last night. I'm doing one tomorrow night. That's kind of my way to promote our show.
It's a good way to do it.
Exactly. And like I said, I'm better vocalizing my thoughts than written word. So people are kind of, I don't want to say surprised. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I sound much more knowledgeable when I'm on somebody else's podcast than my own. And that leads me to my next point. How do you balance the success of the show versus your personal success? Like, I'm not the lead analyst on our show. by any means. That's Nate, I would say, out of the four of us. But it's one of those things where I constantly am thinking about the show before my own personal growth. Do you do the same thing?
I think we're fortunate where the three of us are close friends, same age, same part of life. We built this business together. We all own it. We never. I think the success of the brand and ourselves are perfectly the same. So we've never really viewed it through the lens of like, or at least I can't speak for them, but I've never really thought of it in terms of one different from the other. If this show succeeds, then I succeed, and I think that's how they view it. And the nice thing is that we do have it. We do have ownership over our product and our brand, so it's not like we're beholden to some different standard or something we don't want to be doing. And so, yeah, I think as the show grows, we feel personally successful.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, like, obviously, we're still plugging away, we're still trying, but I will always pump the guys before myself.
Sure.
A thousand times out of 1,000, because I believe in everybody that we have that you see on the podcast and behind the scenes as well. That's just how I am. I try not to take too much credit for anything too. I will say I assembled a great team. So again, guys and gal, will be announcing our newest member very soon. Thank you again, obviously, for this and everything you do. So what is the best advice you can give someone? Like, how do you really grow your brand to separate from, this, it's such a muddied pack of podcasts and Twitter analysts.
Yeah, I mean, we get asked that question a lot. I mean, people obviously, like you mentioned, if you have a podcast, people want to know what you know and how to grow, and it's hard not to give something that would be perceived as a cliche type of answer. So I'll try not to do that. But I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me is having something specific about your brand that you're passionate about and that you can communicate in all the different areas where you interact. I mean, you look at somebody, and I use this example a lot when describing, building a brand. Matt Harmon with his reception perception product, that was something that he crafted a niche out of like many years ago, got him the attention, got him the job at NFL, now with Yahoo. It was something specific that he was passionate about and could bring to the table to an industry and add value. We've never felt extremely threatened by other shows because we have our brand figured out. And if you want to listen to us, listen to us. If you want to listen to somebody else, listen to somebody else. If you have something valuable to say, I think people will find it. And, that's probably my best advice is just know who you are. Know who you are as an analyst. Know who you are as a brand. You can't be chasing everybody else or trying to be everybody else. You have to be true to your personality as a brand and as a person. And if people connect with that, I think growth will come along with it. And that's the best advice I think I can give.
So before, to kind of prep for the show, when I took lunch at work today, I was just kind of scrolling through your Twitter a little bit. You don't put out a ton of content. You see a lot of people, like, they might not have a podcast, they might not write anywhere, but they're always tweeting something. Is that because you want people to come and listen to you? Because that's my thought. Like, people ask me, why don't you tweet a lot about fantasy football? Well, you can hear me talk about it for an hour a week. All you have to do is just download the Dynasty Rewind. So, I mean, is that your thought? Or, I mean, obviously you do this for your job, so maybe you don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's ebbs and flows. I mean, a lot of it right now is we're taking a break, in a mental break from a season of insanity. So a lot of our interaction on Twitter comes while a Monday Night Football game's on or a Thursday Night Football game's on, and it does ebb and flow, though. I mean, you want it to be something where it's not an obligation. It's something you enjoy, that interaction. So I think there are times when we're all more active, and there are times when we're like, all right, I need like a day or two off from the trolls, or I need a day or two off from like thinking about fantasy football.
Yeah. Do you think it's easier for you now that you do this full time than when you were doing this? Obviously, you had a full-time job, and then you did the podcast. I don't know when you guys did it, like at night or on a weekend or something like that.
Yeah.
because for me, I work 8 to 5:30, come home, dinner with the family, little girl goes to bed, shower, a little bit of time with my wife, and then I'm up here watching film. So, I mean, you obviously, like, if you're going to do film breakdowns or anything like that, you get to do it during the day. That's your
Yeah.
job. So
Yeah.
that must make it easier for you, right?
Yeah, I think it does make it easier. It's a bit of an unfair advantage when you get to do that full time, to be able to spend all of that work hours on something you love doing. And it does change a little bit the dynamic of hobby fantasy football mind and like full-time work fantasy football mind. I brought up earlier wanting to root for, our listeners' success over our own individual, leagues. There are those types of dynamics that permeate through doing fantasy football as a business where, it's 24/7 for us all year long. So some of the things that hobby fantasy football might make you, you need breaks is what I'm saying. You need time to focus. That's why we like business building. That's why we like that we do the Spitballers podcast, just literally to talk about something different than fantasy football, because you need balance to be able to come fresh to fantasy football and be passionate about it. And we try to keep that balance. Like, some people might think the best way to grow would be, 80 hours a week, every single week. Well, maybe, but I think people can tell whether you're excited about what you're talking about. I think people can tell whether or not you're like excited to be at the table talking to your friends. And so we try to maintain that right balance where it's always a joy to sit down and talk to one another. It's always a joy to write that article or share that piece of content. And so less desperation and more maintaining the passion for the product.
Yeah, I actually had a few nights like that last week where should have been watching film, and I just
didn't have it in you.
I didn't. I turned my phone off, and I sat with my wife on the couch, and we just sat there. And there was a time we were just sitting there just talking, and it was great. We needed that time to reconnect too. And you make a great point. Sometimes you need to just disconnect. And I find whenever I want to disconnect, all of a sudden I'm getting DMs. Would you trade this for this and this? It's like,
sure.
Where were you when I was staring at my phone for however long the other day, getting nothing? And now it's like, I need some time to myself. I need some family time. And oh, here you are. But I don't want to let people down. I try to be super responsive, not so much on the show account. I tell everybody, DM me, not the show, because I'm not on the show account a ton. I try to be responsive to everybody because I really do. I do care about all of our listeners. And if I don't win a single championship next year or the year after, but someone tells me, hey, I won because of your advice.
Sure.
To me, that's a win.
Rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the money that I put out for the league, that's gone.
That'd be nice to get back to. Yeah.
It would. Yeah. Just give me like a third place finish so I can, spot the money for the league. That's really all I need.
Sure.
So last one that I'm going to hit you with, and then I'm going to let you get out of here. We going to have any XFL fantasy talk on the Fantasy Footballers podcast?
Not that I can see. You
Really?
never know. I'll never rule it out, but
Okay.
probably not. I mean, this is a little bit of that stay in your lane advice that I think I was given earlier, where that's not something I think is going to be people ask us, are we going for 5 years, are we going to start a basketball, a baseball podcast, an IDP podcast? We know who we are. And I don't think XFL is you turn the page and the next chapter is XFL for the fantasy footballers. So if you want to dominate that niche, it's all yours.
Well, I don't know, because a lot of these guys, like, we never heard of, and we dive pretty deep. We do play one game though. It's on hiatus now until the XFL comes back. When we're doing our rookie breakdowns, we play NFL or XFL. Where do we think they would succeed? So, obviously, like Najee Harris, Chase Claypool, guys like that, when we talk about them, they're going to be NFL caliber players. But then some of these other guys, smaller guys, like you would know Jonathan Ward of the Cardinals. He's a guy that we really liked, and we thought he could make it in the NFL, but probably more of an XFL talent. So
fun. Yeah, the XFL looks like what is it? They're looking at a merger with the CFL.
Was it the capacity? CFL? Was it the CFL or that league that Johnny Manziel's in? I think you're right. I think it's the CFL.
I thought it was the Canadian Football League. But I don't remember. But it'll be interesting. The XFL was starting to get a little bit of momentum, a little bit of interest. So we'll see what happens.
I was bummed when that came to no longer be.
Yeah.
I thought the entertainment quality was fantastic of it, and the way they did it was good. It was a good product. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think people were responding well to it, and it was the right time of year for it.
Yeah, it was. Hey, before we go, again, thank you very much for taking time out of your day.
Of course.
Do you have anything coming up that a casual listener might not know about that you want to take a minute to talk about?
No, I think we were sitting around today talking about shows, and we're excited to talk rookies. We're going to do a Dynasty Week, almost like a Shark Week, but we'll do Dynasty Week. And we're looking forward to breaking down rookies, getting ready for the NFL Draft, which I'm sure you guys are super stoked about.
We can't wait.
Yeah, and it's such a fun time of year. And I think this year there's so much like new life being breathed into this sport, fantasy football. 2021, 2020 is behind us. Finally. Looking over your shoulder every second for, will this happen? Will this not happen? I think you're going to see a lot of people very excited about, just everything that happens with the NFL. You got a new media deal. So definitely excited about all that's coming, and, wish you guys the best of luck.
Well, thank you. And I don't need to wish you luck because you guys are already killing it. You're what we're looking up to. So Andy, again, tell Mike and Jason they're obviously welcome on this podcast anytime they want to hop on. That's
absolutely
fine too. So
awesome.
Al, you can come on too. I know you're still listening. If you want to come on and talk Dynasty with us one night.
Yeah, Al. What do you say?
I'll probably pass, but I appreciate it.
Is he a Dynasty guy or is he a redraft guy?
He's in our Dynasty League. He is.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah, he gives awesome advice over long periods of time. So
does he? That's great. That's great.
All right.
Trade Al all your 2023 picks. And again, Andy, thank you very much. And until next time, this has been a very special edition of the Dynasty Rewind. Thank you again for watching. Be kind, please rewind, and we'll see you for our regular show in a few hours, everybody.